Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is our live session on Can Spam Act, or basically the rules and regulations regarding who we can send marketing to. So, yesterday I did for the Sharp Marketing Mastermind a session on list building and what it means to grow a list and the kind of things that we should be sending them to increase the amount of referrals we get from people on our marketing list, people who already knew us. And at the end of the session, because we talked a lot about email and just general ways to reach and touch our audience, the question of who we can email and who should be added to our marketing list came up, and who we're authorized to contact with our marketing and with our materials. Now, this is a topic that during the session yesterday, I was kind of flippant in my responses and basically said, yeah, we can email them. Yeah, it's not a big deal. Keep in mind, I'm a marketer, not a lawyer. And so ultimately, I'm more worried about how to be effective with our marketing. And a lot of attorneys and a lot of law firm marketers are also equally concerned with following the rules and making sure we're not violating some sort of guideline. And email marketing in particular falls in this weird, almost gray area where it doesn't feel like the rules regarding email marketing are talked about enough. And there's a lot of confusion there. And there's a lot of different layers of what you would call policing when it comes to email marketing. And I think a lot of times the big issue comes with conflating what our email service providers want versus what's actually required of us. So before I get into some research I'm going to share with you, or some of the FTC regulations regarding marketing and outbound reach, I'll throw in the caveat that I don't know the rules for your state. There are like 50 states in the United States, and each of them have different rules, legal marketing rules that we have to follow. I'm only talking about the broad federal rules regarding email marketing and marketing outreach in general. So I'm just going to start really quick, and I'm going to share links to my sources in the follow-up email after this live session is recorded. And actually, I'm going to share my screen here so you guys can see what I'm seeing. Audio sharing is coming soon. All right, so this is me. Well, I'm gonna pause sharing my screen. I'll share my sources later. I don't want to risk. Oh, you know what? We got to do it sometime. We got to do it sometime, right? So I'm gonna share with you as soon as I find it. This article. Oh, good grief! Now I can't even freaking find the thing. Okay, here we go. No, here we go. Okay. So you guys can hopefully see this. This is from ftc.gov. This is straight from the horse's mouth, and I can find it. These are the list of basically requirements that we as marketers have to follow to comply with the Can Spam Act. And I won't leave this up here for too long, but I'll go through the list. Don't use false or misleading header information. So your from, your to, your reply to should all be accurate. And you want to do that anyway because it helps with your sendability, and it also helps with your long-term branding, right? Don't use deceptive subject lines. Now, deceptive, being the key word here, because a good subject line is a little bit deceptive to some degree, right? It's not an outright lie, though. And what Can Spam Act is telling us is we can't lie in our headline or in our subject line. We can't make the subject line, I owe you $10,000 and open up the email and it be, some marketing BS, right? We shouldn't do that. A lot of advertisers, you've probably seen emails like that, do it anyway. So it's one of the rules that's often violated. But what's important to keep in mind here is that, these things aren't there's no Can Spam Act police. There's nobody, looking through what small businesses are doing with their email subject lines. They're going after the big companies, the big spammers who are intentionally misleading people with their email marketing. Um, Identify the message as an ad. But essentially, a lot of law firm marketing require this anyway, that we clearly label things as advertisement. But in an email newsletter, where we're updating somebody about community events or sharing important information, it's not necessarily marketing, it's list building. And it's not necessarily an ad in the traditional sense that they're discussing here. Tell recipients where you're located, make sure your address is displayed. A lot of CRMs do this by default. You don't have the option to switch it off. Tell recipients how to opt out of marketing from you. Make sure your subscribe button is visible. Remember that members and subscribers can unsubscribe too. It's basically telling you the same thing twice. Like, people should be able to opt out. It doesn't matter how engaged they are with you as a business. So a lead can opt out of your newsletter as equally and as easily well as somebody who's paying you, a client, can. Now, you can talk to the client. If somebody opts out of your email newsletter and it was a client, you see that in your CRM, you can absolutely call them and say, like, hey, I saw you decided not to get the newsletter any longer. Can I ask you some questions? What could we have done to make it better? Or you could tell them, like, hey, you've opted out of this email. Just want to let you know you may miss important updates in the future. And you can talk to them, and maybe they don't want to receive marketing, and that's fine. Just live and let live. Honor those requests to opt out. Again, most CRMs do this automatically with a button press. Gmail lets me unsubscribe in my email. I don't even have to visit anyone's site. And then monitor what others are doing on your behalf. That's it. That's a list of 8 rules that you have to be compliant to Can Spam. Notice that nowhere here does it say anything about who you can send emails to. None of these rules require that you get consent to send emails, that you can't buy a list. You absolutely can, according to these rules. None of these rules forbid that. And so with email marketing, you are free to email anyone whose email you have access to, but you have to make it easy for them to stop receiving your emails, and you have to be honest about the information that you're presenting. That's the letter of the law. And I feel like, hopefully, if you're reading this and I don't know, maybe you're surprised, you're like, hold on, like, I need some extra reassurance, Tiffany, not just by exclusion. I know it says you can't, it doesn't say you can't buy a list, but, Tiffany, why should I take your word on it? Okay, fair enough. There's another article here. I already got it set up. I bought a list of email addresses for people likely to be interested in my niche product. If I comply with commercial email requirements of Can Spam, do I have anything to worry about? The Can Spam Act doesn't require indicators of commercial emails to get recipients' consent before sending them commercial emails. That is from the FTC. So, again, there is nothing stopping you from adding people to your marketing list who you meet, who you call, who contact you. When it comes to email, you're free to email people. And there may be individual state rules, regarding legal marketing and rules of solicitation that say you can only, contact somebody or do outreach to somebody who's already initiated that relationship. And most of the time, when somebody calls you about a case, they're initiating a relationship. And so that typically satisfies the requirements. Now, if you back up a little bit, think broader about this, take the focus off email for a second, there are a lot more stricter rules and regulations regarding outbound phone calls and outbound text messages. And if you ever had to set up a lead docket to send text messages, it's a process, right? The lead docket has to send you the text that you have to put on your website. Your web vendor, your SEO company has to put it on the forms, on every form on your site. It has to be visible in your footer. You have to be able to go to the privacy policy page and read what essentially is a disclosure that says, by filling out this form, you are consenting to receive our text messages. And so that's what that is. And then once you're in compliance, your website is in compliance, you can then apply to basically send SMS marketing messages. And you have to be approved by a regulatory body. I forget exactly the body name, but it's federally regulated. And once you get that permission, once you display that your site is in compliance and you completed the registration, you fill out all the information they need, boom, you can send text messages from Lead Docket. And you can do so specifically to people who've contacted you and who've initiated a relationship. And this is really, really important. And this is a hard lesson I have to teach some marketers who want to follow the rules. I feel like there are a lot of people out there who just have the best intentions. They don't want to do anything wrong, particularly in the marketing and the legal marketing space. And so they're extra cautious. But the extra caution makes them ineffective marketers, because what they're doing is saying like, oh, we got to be real careful about who we send emails to, and real careful about we have to make sure we get an opt-in, a double opt-in, get their signature on this form. But like, if you're putting layers between you and being able to market to the lead, you are literally like crippling yourself. You are making it difficult for you to do your job and for you to meet your KPIs. And so you need to be aware of these rules, if only to be aware that it's not something you have to like tiptoe around. You can send an email newsletter. You can, and I mean, literally, you can send an email. You could buy a list of everyone in your city and put them on your email newsletter and start sending it tomorrow. And nothing, well, I mean, depending on your state's legal marketing ethics rules, according to the FTC, you're good to go, right? You're fine. But here's why you may not want to do that. And here's the nuance. Here's the nuance here, right? Because we have laws and regulations governing our communication right here through the FTC, but we also have the email service providers, the MailChimp, the active campaigns. And then, frankly, we just have the people we're emailing. And we want to, as marketers, give everyone a good experience with our content. I really hate spammers who like operate in the name of we're doing cold outreach and marketing. It's like, no, you're spamming a list, casting a wide net, and hoping that some people bite. And the rules of math, kind of marketing and math, kind of say you're going to net a few sales if you do a whole bunch of cold outreach, right? But we're not talking about that, right? We're talking about like email newsletters. We're talking about law firms. We're talking about nurturing referral relationships. And you don't do that by like spamming people into oblivion, right? But there's a difference between sending out, 25 unsolicited emails to a single person in 2 days and sending an informational, educational, entertaining newsletter once a week, twice a week, even every day. And really think about it like this, the frequency in which you can send and it be, good with your audience entirely hinges on how good your content is. There are some people who I get email newsletters from. I'd be happy if they emailed me twice a day, with the same level of content they're giving me once a week. But that's not realistic, right? To make good content, it takes time. Right. And so they email you once a week because that's all they can supply. I feel like I'm getting off track a little bit here. So let me wrangle it back in. But basically, you can email a list as much as you want if you're delivering on the promise of being a good marketer and giving them good content and entertaining them. And so when it comes to email service providers and your marketing list in general, no, you don't want to spam. Like you don't want to create a bad experience for somebody. You want to pay attention to your email marketing metrics, open rate, click rate, opt-in rate, opt-out rate, unsubscribe rate, all the rates. You want to catch all of those. And you want to make sure that they're trending in the right direction. You're measuring these things on a continuum, and each week your click rate's getting a little better, your open rate's a little bit better, and you're just driving for better metrics. And we're doing this, and we're talking about this in conjunction with spam and marketing, because the email service providers, it's like its own Google algorithm, right? So if you send somebody an email, it doesn't get opened, it doesn't get clicked, it doesn't get a reply. Google, which is Gmail, is huge. Outlook is also huge. All of these email service providers have their own algorithm for deciding how important an email is. And if you don't create this good experience where people open it, engage with it, reply to it, the algorithm learns that your email is not important. And so it gets pushed to promotions or spam. Your sender score, which is like your domain rating for your email, right? That slowly degrades because the email service providers say this person sends low quality content often and people don't react to it, so they don't love it. And it's not a question of do they hate it, it's a question of do they love it. And that's the big secret of marketing. If you make something bad, nobody's going to watch it. So, you don't have to worry about making things, make things, and if they're bad, nobody will see them, and the world moves on. But if people love them, everyone sees it. And so our aim in marketing isn't to make things that people don't hate. It's to make things that people love. And so the same goes for your email. If you're delivering on a good experience, something that people love to open and love to engage with, you're showing these email service providers people enjoy your content, then you're going to get a better domain rating. And then last thing I'll touch on, which is the question of double opt-in. Should we get double opt-in? Double opt-in is not required via the can spam rules. So that's not a rule. Like, we don't have to get a double opt-in. Double opt-in is a best practice. And it's a best practice that mainly benefits MailChimp, ActiveCampaign. And hold on. Gotta check my cameras. Hold on. Hold on one second, guys. I have to pause the live. Everett, don't scream like that. This is that happens when you work from home and your kids are screaming. It's ridiculous. Anyway, so ActiveCampaign, MailChimp, all of these email senders that we use and leverage, right? They want you to get double opt-ins because it's basically like a mechanically requiring the people who use their service to follow best practices. So if somebody double opts into an email, they're committed to open your email because they made a contact with you, they filled out a form, they did a call, they received an email that says, "Hey, would you like to see our marketing?" And then they clicked yes. I mean, that sounds really simple, but it's a big lift. Not many people are going to follow through with that. But if they do, they're really likely to engage with your email and interact with your email. And that helps MailChimp and ActiveCampaign and these other senders down the road because Gmail, Outlook basically learn to respect them. So they know MailChimp sends good emails and they're not spam. And so the double opt-in is more a requirement these companies put on the people who use their services, small businesses. So small businesses are following the best practices that will long term make the businesses look good, hurt their marketing a little bit in the process because you're getting double opt-ins and only reaching like about a quarter of the people you could potentially reach. So they're limiting your marketing, forcing you to follow a really narrow rule of best practices. Long term, it helps MailChimp and ActiveCampaign, but usually doesn't help the small business who's out there hustling and trying to get more referrals, right? So, that's why I tell people, I get double opt-ins from clients, because I want to make sure clients are committed to us. And we're more likely to get double opt-ins from clients because they are committed to us. They've signed the fee agreement. So I like to try to get double opt-ins from that group to really like secure them in the email list. But a double opt-in, particularly at the intake level, is not required. There's no rule requiring it. And I'm pretty sure I'd be really surprised to hear there's like bar rules regarding double opt-in because double opt-in, that's again like a mechanical, it's not written down in any kind of legal rule book that I can find, like regarding email marketing. Double opt-in is was put forth by these email service providers to force businesses to do something they should already be doing, but it's too much. It's too much of a lift for a small business to get a double opt-in for every single person. It's just unrealistic. Um, so and then we talk a lot, like, the little for me, a little bit of irony here is I talk to a lot of legal marketers who are concerned about email marketing, concerned about text messages. We don't want to violate any rules. We don't want to do this. They don't want to do that. But I never hear marketers talking about what are the rules regarding telephone outreach. And there are a lot. There are a lot of rules governing how we can do outreach by phone to potential clients. There are a ton, but it never comes up because picking up the phones, returning calls is a core business necessity for law firms. That's how law firms make money. And so it never comes up a question of, oh, do we have enough permission to return this person's phone call who contacted us about a legal case? No, that doesn't come up because if we didn't do it, these law firms wouldn't make money. And so there are more rules regarding that form of outreach than there are about email marketing. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind when you're stressing about it. And with the rules, I can be a little flippant. I'm an outlaw, as I like to say. But so I there I'm not the type of person who's going to stress over, is my email newsletter compliant? I'm the type of person who's going to say, is my newsletter going to get the results that I want? Is it going to speak to people in a way that represents the brand well? Those are the questions we should be asking. Not necessarily like, how do we adhere the rules to the best? We don't need that. But we need to be asking, how do we be effective marketers? And be familiar with this stuff. I'm gonna provide you these links that I shared here in this live call. Look into the rules regarding phone call outreach as well. Just eye opening. It really is. And then don't stress as much. Send your email newsletter. Build your list. Add them to the marketing list, because unless there's a state or local legal marketing requirement that's 10 times more strict than what the federal government requires, you're fine. Don't stress it. So I hope you learned something today. Thank you so much. Next live session, I will schedule it and everyone will get an email when it's scheduled to go out. I'm kind of learning how to use this feature. If you have any comments or you want to ask me a question about anything you heard on this video, send me an email, leave a chat or a comment on the video, and I'll answer it. So thank you guys so much. Talk to you soon.